So welcome back to class. Now, so we are creating fruits. First, we go with orange, and we go with apple, and then maybe melon, right? Okay. Now, if we want to repeat everything right here down, we can just use the fill handle to drag it, and the fill handle will populate that all through the column, right? So let's give it a try. So I have this, okay? It will follow the order, like, and then fill it like a series. Do you get that? But I cannot come here and expect that the fill handle will fill the same thing. Nothing will happen here. Do you get that? If I want the same thing to happen here, I have to literally copy and then paste it here. But what if I am just able to type ORANGE, and then if I use the fill handle all through, then the same series will appear. Okay, but right now, if I type ORANGE, the series is not appearing. Do you get that? Because it's only populating the first content in this cell. All right. So how do I get the series to be replicated in any column I want? I can use the custom series. Okay. So what I will do is I need only this, and I have to just select the range of cells. Okay. And then I keep in mind the content in the range of cell. It's orange, apple, melon, right? So I'll go straight to the file menu, and then I'll go down to the options. Okay, and then at options, I'm going to advanced, and then at advanced, I'm going to the general tab, where I'll be able to change or make my custom list as I want it. So we are looking for the general tab. Okay, so here is the general tab, okay? And then if we go down and scroll to the right, in fact, let me make this smaller so you can all see the option I'm going to choose. If I would drag to the right, you would see edit custom list, right? So I will click on that, and then you would see, let me make it bigger now. Now you would see that the range of cells that I selected has been populated here, okay? It's now here. The range of cells that I selected is here, and that is B4 to B6. Now look at that. So B, starting from where? 4 to B what? 6. Okay, so the range of cell is nicely selected here. However, you see something like a $sign, right? Before the B and before the 4, and same for the one on the right. This we will talk about later. It is called absolute referencing. When you want the position of the cells as read into the memory of Excel to stay the same anywhere you move them, then you use the absolute referencing. So we'll talk about that later. So once this is selected here, the next thing I have to do is to choose the new list, okay? So what is the new list I want to put here? Is a new list of fruit. And what is the first one? Orange, apple, and then melon. Is that not so? So I'll just type orange. Now for each one I type, I press enter. Then I come to the next one, which is apple. Then I go to the next one, which is melon. Okay? Now I'm done. So what I need to do is to add. So I add that. And now you see down here, you have orange, apple, melon. Do you see that, guys? Okay, so now I'll click on OK. And then I click on another OK, which is right down here. So once I'm done, it means that now I can actually populate this list in any column that I want, okay? So all that I have to do is I come to this column. Now if I type orange, and then I use the fill handle. Now you see my list is working, right? Okay, so now I have it as orange, apple, melon. Now the next thing is formulas. So the next thing we are going to do is formulas. Now let's say that I have the price of these fruits. So I'm typing price here. Apple 4 USD, and here is what? 3 USD, okay? So what we want to say about formulas is that in Excel, using formulas is very significant because it allows you to always keep your answers even when the element or the content of the preceding cell is changed. What I mean by that is that if I would create a formula right here and then I change the value here, okay, my formula here still stays the same, but the answer will change. Okay, so I don't need to always go back to add again. If I don't use a formula, now notice what I mean. If I don't use a formula and I'll just literally add it, I'll say 2 plus 4 is 6, 6 plus 3 is 9. Is that not so? So I enter that one. Now when I change the value here, if I change the value here, it does not affect the total, does it? So it means I have to recalculate again and put the answer there, right? Now my boss is going to sack me if I'm always doing this. So you create the formula, then with the help of the formula, you can always have the results changing. Is that okay? Okay, so if you want to say here is the total, maybe the total. Anytime you use a formula, then the total will change whenever there is any value change here. So let's say tomorrow, they said that we are no more selling the orange for $6, but we are selling it for $2, then you can get your total automatically. So that is the benefit of formulas for you, okay? Right, so to get the sum or the total of this, we can literally sum up, okay? So for formulas, you either use equal to, you use equal to at the start, or you can use plus, or you can use minus at the start, but Excel will interpret this as you want to start writing a formula. Okay, so usually we go with equal to. So I can just say equal to, and then I will use a function called sum to create the formula. Is that okay? Right, so I'll just use that function. If I type sum, now notice this. The reason we are not going to do all the functions in the class is what I'm going to show you now. If you type sum, now you see that the description for the sum appears here, right? So in the class, if I'm going to take all the formulas or all the functions, I will literally be telling you whatever Excel is telling you when you enter the function. Do you get the point? So there is no need running through all of the functions, because when you see the function and you type it in the cell, Excel can tell you what that function actually means and how to use it. Is that okay? So that makes it very easy. So we'll go through just a couple of them and I'll give you the rest, and then you try them step by step. If you're confused, you can always Google and you have the explanation and how to use it there. I say equal to sum. Always a function has got the name of the function and then a parenthesis, okay, what you call bracket. So you type in the bracket, and then you would see that Excel is even giving me an idea of what I should put in the parenthesis. Now this thing you see as number 1, number 2, we call them parameters, okay? So every function has got parameters. So some functions don't take a parameter. Please take note, okay? Some functions do not take a parameter. For example, now. Okay, now is a function, but it doesn't take any parameter. Okay, some functions also take only one parameter. Some people call the parameter as an argument. Okay, so maybe you see that somewhere they are the same. So remember, Some functions takes argument or parameters. Some functions take only one argument or parameter. Some functions takes more than one argument or parameter. Is that okay? So I'm saying that when you type in the sum, now the next thing that you put there is the parenthesis, and then the next thing that you put there is the parameter or the arguments. So some functions will take no argument or parameter. Other functions will take just one argument or parameter. Other functions will take more than one argument or parameters. Okay? So if you look at this function sum, you can see that it is asking for parameter 1, parameter 2, and you see dot 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 here, right? It means it can take as many parameters you want to put in. Is that not so? Right. So we are going to just enter two parameters. And the parameters or the argument we're going to enter is the cell address, okay, of where our numbers are populated or our numbers are. So we want to pick the range of cells we want to sum up, okay? So you can do this through what we call referencing. Now, referencing can be done by pointing or literally clicking on the cell you are interested to do your operations on. This is what I mean. If I click here, this is one way of referencing. Now, I have referenced cell C4, and that forms the first argument of the sum function. Is that okay? Cool. So, if I am interested to add up all the values from cell C4 to cell C6, then I have to indicate with the sign or the punctuation that allows me to determine a range. Okay? So the punctuation that allows me to determine a range is the full column. So once I put the full column there, then I have the chance to select where the range should end. Now, the moment I referenced the last point of the range, you see that the address was added. Okay? So now C6 becomes my second argument. So it means that the sum function is going to be performed on the range of cells beginning from C4 to C6. So now I will have to close it, and the moment I close it, I can press on enter. So the value here is the sum of the numbers within the range of cells. Any questions? This is very easy. So now, if I would change any value, for instance, they said the price for orange is now $2, then I press on enter, you would see that the value here changes. Okay? So that is the advantage of using formulas. It helps you to automate a process that you have to do over and over and over again. Okay. The next thing we are treating in formulas is to also tell you about operators. Here, you saw that we used a formula, but we used a function to get our answer. But you can also use operators. For example, plus, minus, division, and so on. Okay? And Excel also allows for the use of comparative operators like greater than, less than, and so on. All right? Typically, as you all know about BODMAS, you know about BODMAS, right? Yes. Excel also has a way it calculates its computations. Okay, so let's say that I want to be able to add up the price of the orange to the price of melon and divide it by the price of apple. Okay? So if you like, I want to add the price of the orange and the melon and divide it by the total. So anything, all right, that you can think of. Now, I would use the operators. Now let's see what happens. If I'll press on equal to, then I will do cell referencing, okay? So I've shown you the first way is to just click on that cell and then the address is picked up, okay? There is also, now that one is called relative referencing, okay? So with relative referencing, you only put in the cell address. You don't add any dollar sign to it. You don't add anything to it. Now, relative addressing changes with respect to the position. Now, I am demonstrating this right now. So, if I say relative address or relative reference of this, C4, okay? And then I put in an operator, let's say plus, and I'm adding it to C6, right? Okay, so now, if I want to divide, okay, I have to actually follow, if I actually want to do a proper division of the sum of these two divided by a certain number, then I have to follow the Excel mode of calculation. Okay? Now I'll show you that, but before that, let me literally do a division just to explain relative referencing, absolute referencing, and mixed referencing, okay? Then we'll come back to how Excel does the operation. So if I would divide by this, that will be C5. Is that okay? I could also type any number here to divide. It also works, okay? So I will say divided by C5. Then I press on enter. So Excel, if you look at the formula bar, Excel is actually adding this and is performing this operation. Excel is actually performing this operation. But how it is doing that, can we decipher, everyone? Can you decipher why you have 2.75? No, it doesn't follow board mass. It follows what we call PEMDAS, okay? I will explain what that means. Okay, right. So you have, if you're taking it from the DAS part, you have division, addition, and subtraction. So division comes before addition in Excel, okay? And then before subtraction. So I'll show you that one later. So what we just did was C4. What is C4? C4 is 2 plus C6, which is 3, divided by C5. But if Excel is going to go by its formula, then it means it's going to do C6 over C5. Is that also? Yes. Okay. So, and then it will add that result to C4, right? Yes. So it means that C6 over C5 is maybe 0.75. Is that true? Yes, yes. The reason we are doing this is to demonstrate to you what relative referencing is. So you see that in relative referencing, there is no absolute symbol here. The absolute symbol is the dollar sign. So if I would drag using the fill handle down here, notice what happens. The values change, right? So how is this working? Now you click on that and you go and view the formula. You would see that Excel has changed the cell reference relative to the position. Okay? So what it means is that instead of here being C4, C6, here it is C5, C7. Okay? So why? Because when you move downwards, Excel is referring now to the position. Okay, so instead of taking C4, it will now come and take C5, and then it will take C7. Okay, so here, look, at the first step, it took this one, it took C4 and C6. Now, notice the cell addressing very well. It took C4 and C6, okay? So that means position 1 and position 3. Is that not so?
Yes.
Because it is just right here. When I come down, Excel is thinking that you have moved your position because it is relative referencing, okay? So when you move your position down, now the corresponding cell to be taken is C5, okay? And then the third position becomes C7. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay, now when I move down here, it is taking what? C6, because that's the corresponding one relative to the position. And then it is taking C8, which is the third position, obviously nothing here. Do you understand? And then the rest is also the one that is in the middle to divide it, which is the C7. Okay, now if I would drag this down, we will get an error because it will get to a place where relative to the position, there is actually no value within the cell. So we get an error. Do you guys get that? Okay, so if I would just so you see, okay, so we get division error, okay, because at some point the values relative to the position doesn't really add up. This is very important if you are performing different kinds of computation. Now I'm going to give you an example. For instance, the prices of these fruits are respectively here. What if you are asked by your boss to add $2 to each of the prices, or to add 0.25 to each price? Is that okay? So you can use relative referencing fairly well and it will work for you, so that you don't have to be adding one after the other. Now, these are just 3, but you can have a sheet where like about 100 columns are filled, and then you have to add 0.25 to each one of them. So you don't have to do it step by step. Like you come and do, okay, 2 plus 0.5, then you put the answer there. 4 plus 4, and you put the answer there. No, you will not finish the work. Is that okay? So you can use, number 1, formulas and formula along with your relative referencing. Okay, so how do you do that? You just do equal to, okay? And then you say the first one, C4, and then you say plus what? 0.25 or 0.25, okay? And then you press on enter. So here, you would see the importance of relative referencing. When I drag down, Excel is going to consider the relative position and then add 0.25 to it. Is that okay? So I'll be now able to have all the 0.25 added all through with respect to the position. That is the advantage of relative referencing here. So you see that. So if I'll drag down, okay, you see that? So I'll have 4.25, 3.25, 9.25. So if you check, you would see that the cell address for C5 changes from each step. Is that not so?
Yes.
So here it turns out C6, here it turns out C7, and so on. So that is relative referencing. Now let's get to the second one, which is absolute referencing. With absolute referencing, you do not want the cell addresses to change with respect to position. Okay? So you are making it static. So that means that if you were doing that, you need to introduce the absolute symbol. And then the absolute symbol is the $sign. Okay? So you put a $sign before the column name and then before the row name. So for instance, if I want to make an absolute reference to C4, I'll just do $C and $4. Okay, now you see it has selected. Did you see that? Okay, now if I want to add it, maybe just say I want to add 2 to it, so I just do +2, right? Now I press on enter, I get the result. So it means 2 + 2, right?
Yes.
But what happens? Let's see what happens if I drag it down. It's still 4, okay? Because the addresses are not changing with respect to position. It is static, it's absolute. Okay, so whenever you come and check up, you see that still is C4. Still is C4 right here. So we call this absolute referencing. Now, let's move on. The third one is called mixed referencing. So with mixed referencing, your guess is as good as mine. It means you're going to have one absolute and one relative, right? So you can have either the column to be absolute and the row as relative. Or you can have the row as absolute and you have the column as relative. How do you do that? You just change. Okay, here. Equal to, if we are making the column absolute, we go with $. You see that, guys? C. Then we can just say C4. It still selects a C4, right?
Yes.
But then the row value is not absolute. In other words, the row value will change with respect to position. Okay, but then the column value will be static. Okay, now that means that, let's see the behavior of this. C4 + 2. Okay, check what happens. You see the values change? They are changing with respect to the row value. Okay, if I will use a fill handle and drag to this side, I'll get the same values repeating. Why? Because the column is static. Okay? But the rows do change. Do you guys get what I mean? Yeah. So, because the row values are changing, if it is C5, still it is in the column of C. But then C5 has got a different value. Okay? So still is in the column of C. So every value here will be added to what I actually did, the 2. So that's why you see the values populating. What about if we just change the absolute position and give it to the row? What do you think will happen? Okay? It means that it's only the column that will be changing with respect to position, but the row will not change. So what do you expect this to be? Anybody with a guess? If I drag it over, yes? Anybody with a guess? What will be the answers? Yes? Yes. Okay? It will repeat the same thing, just like the gentleman said, right? Exactly so. Why? Because the row is static, huh?
Yes.
But then the column is what? No, the column is not absolute, it's relative, right? But when I moved it, did you see that? When I moved it to the right, okay, let me just undo. When I move it to the right, see, the values are not just 4, but they are 4.25, indicating something, right? Indicating that the column changed to D. Is that also? So just like that. Another fun thing you can do in Excel is that you can change, quiet please. You can change the cell name so that instead of C4, you can put any name that you are happy with here. So maybe you can type hair. And when you press on enter, anytime you refer to that cell, you have to refer to it as hair. Okay? So if I do equal to, then I say hair, it will select this cell address. Do you understand? Okay, then I say here plus what? Plus 2, then you get the answer. Okay? So now that we are done, this takes us to how to reference sheets. Okay? But before we look at referencing sheets, let us look at how Excel performs the arithmetic operations. The operations, I said that we have operators like plus, minus, asterisk. If you use the asterisk, you're doing multiplication. And then if you use the forward slash like we did, you're doing division. And we have the percent sign, okay? You can also use percent. Okay, so for instance, you want to type 95%, okay, of something. You can do that. Then you use the caret. The caret is like this, is like a greater than sign showing upwards, okay? That's the caret. And that is for exponentiation. Okay, so like this. You use the shift key and then you press on the number 6 and that gives you the caret, okay? Excel starts computing its formulas from where? Now, that is the order of operation. So please take note of that. So that means if you have 2 or more operators and then they are the same in an Excel formula, they may be at different positions, right? So you will consider it from the left. So when you are moving from the left, the first one will be considered. Or if you have more than 1 operators, obviously the same thing, we start from the left, okay? However, there is the order of precedence. And then it starts with negation first. Negation, negative. Okay? So apart from the negative, the rest, you can use the acronym, the PEMDAS acronym I'm saying. And then PEMDAS, P stands for percent, E stands for exponential or exponentiation, M stands for multiplication, and then D stands for division, A stands for addition, and then S for subtraction. Okay? So apart from the negation, the rest is what PEMDAS, right? Instead of board mass, as you know. Is that okay? Right. So take note of that. That's how Excel performs its computation. And then it starts from where? Left to the right. Okay? So please take note. So I am sure you may see some in your midterm, I'm sure. So you may have a certain operation. For example, you can have, if I ask you all this, for instance, if I say equal to 6 plus, just like we did right now, 27 out of 3, what is the answer? Everybody check it and tell me the answer. Before I press on enter, what's the answer? Yeah, follow Excel's. So you can be asked a question like this in the exam. Okay? Is what?
11.
It's not correct. It's not 11. It's 15. Okay? Yeah. So how did they do it? If you start first, you start from left to right, huh? And the operator addition is not supposed to come before the next operator, which is division. Is that not so? So it means division is going to be considered what? First. 3 goes into 27 9 times. Is that not so?
Yeah.
So now 9 plus 6 is what? 15. So you see the answer here, right? Okay, so during the exam, you will not have the Excel sheet to try and get the result. So you should know how the computation is done. Is that okay? Let's go to the next thing, which is sheet referencing. Now, with sheet referencing, now you remember in the previous class, we said Excel has a workbook, and in the workbook you can have multiple sheets. So here is a sheet 1. You can actually rename it, okay, by double clicking and then you type anything there, okay. Then they say history is a reserved name, so it means I can't use it, okay? So maybe, okay, so history 00 is fine. It took that. All right, so I can create another sheet, sorry. I can create another sheet. So this is sheet 2, okay. Now, in order to avoid you being confused in the sheet referencing, I want to change this back to sheet 1, okay? Okay. So, I can also have another sheet. So you can have multiple sheets right here. But, let's say, this sheet, of course, any sheet you create is empty, there is nothing in there. Now, if I want to refer to something here and then use it for calculation in the sheet 3, is this possible? Yes. So let's say for the start, I am interested in adding 2, which is on at the cell address C4, to a value here, which is at the cell address D5. Okay, in the sheet 3. Please take note. So how do I do it? I'll just do the sheet referencing. So to reference a sheet, you use the exclamation sign. I mean this sign. Okay, you press on shift and you press on the key 1 and then you see the exclamation. So we start with our equal to as usual for every formula. Okay, so equal to sheet, then you call the sheet name. Okay, but before we call the sheet name, we need to use the function we want. We actually want to add, okay? So we use the sum. So equal to sum, parenthesis, then you come with sheet 1, and then you do this, okay? You use the exclamation sign, right? Okay, and then you will just quote the cell address in that sheet. Okay, so if that cell address is C4, okay, then what do you want to do with C4? You want to add it to something in this sheet, right? So here, okay, do you guys follow? And then you close it and you press on enter and you get 4. Why? Because 2 plus 2, which is here, which is in the C4, okay? 2 plus 2 is what? Is 4. Okay, so let's see. So what we did was, we are just using the columns where there are actually values, okay? And then we are doing reference of sheet 1 to sheet 3, okay? So you see sheet 1 to sheet 3, then we bring our exclamation sign, right? Then we pick every element starting from C5 to D7 in each of the sheets, and then we added them and then we get the result. Is that okay? For instance, if I wanted to add all the elements here, now I have to do D5 plus D6 plus D7 and so on, right? But if I use sum, I can just use the range and then it gives me the result, right? So that's also one benefit of using functions. Okay. Now, I've said early on that some functions take one argument, others don't take any argument, and others take more than one argument. Is that okay? So, if you look at a function like rand, so if I type equal to rand, so like I told you initially, Excel is giving you an explanation to what the rand function is. Is that also? So you see that it says what? Returns a random number greater than or equal to what? 0 or less than 1. Evenly distributed, okay? And then that number changes on recalculation. Okay. So if I put a bracket here, now once you see this, look at that, you see run, the parenthesis come, and the parenthesis closes. It tells you that there is no need for any argument. Is that okay? But when there is a need for argument, for instance, when we're doing the sum, the moment I brought the parenthesis, you saw that it gave me the arguments. That number one, number blah, blah, blah. Is that so? Okay. So I just close it and I press on enter. Then it gives me any random value. So that is the meaning of the random function, right? Just to create any random value for you. Is that okay? I also talked about the function now. It's also a function that returns the current date and time. Okay? It needs no argument or parameter. Now notice, if I just type now, nothing happens, right? But if I start with equal to, then it knows it's a function. So it says now returns what? The current date and time formatted as date and time. You see that? Okay. Okay. So here we go. So now, when I bring the parentheses, you see again, so it tells you no need for argument, right? And then I press on enter, it tells me today's date is 14th February 2023, and then the time is 2:16. Okay. Yeah. Now I'll show you another function. Now, the now function is important for your midterm. Now the next function, today, is also important for your midterm. Now today returns today's date. Okay? So if you start equal to today, and then you bring your bracket, again it is without any what? Argument. So that gives you today's date. Okay. Another function that is relevant for your midterm, and you may use it anywhere, I mean, not just because of the midterm, but is also necessary, is the absolute function. So that is ABS. ABS. Okay, so now you can look at the meaning for that, right? So the absolute function returns the absolute value of a number, okay? A number without its sign. So that means that if I bring my bracket, it will show me that indeed it needs to have a number, right? And then the number, if it is negative, it's going to be turned into positive after I press enter, because that's the meaning of the absolute function. Function requires only how many arguments? One argument. You see that? If it is more than one argument, you would see. Excel will rather show you, right? So what I'm saying is, when you go home, take each of the functions you are going to be given to you, study them, learn, and know which one takes no argument, which one takes one argument, which one takes more than one argument, okay? And what is the meaning of each function? Excel will tell you. Is that okay? And then you try an example of it. And then you don't forget it because you use it in your class project work, okay? So in the class project work, all these functions are going to be relevant. And that's why we are learning them now. What will be the answer? Positive 4, right? So it returns the value without the sign. Okay. Another function that you need to know is the ceiling. So there are so many, so I cannot be taking them one after the other. So the ceiling function. So we type equal to, and if you type ceiling, now you see they start to pop up, right? So we are interested in the ceiling function here. Now you see the meaning of it. It says the ceiling function what? Rounds a number up, but not just the number, running the number up, but it runs it to the nearest multiple of significance, okay? So you should know about multiples of a number. When we say multiples of some number, do you understand? Okay, multiples of 2 is what? 6, 8, and so on. Is that okay? Good. So it will run the number that you enter, it will run it to the nearest multiple significance. So it means that there will be two parameters needed, the number and then the significance. You get that? Okay, so it's very simple. So you type your ceiling, or you can just choose the option there, and then you see that now Excel is telling you how many parameters or arguments. It is the number and then the significance. So if I would type 4, maybe 4.98, and then what do? I put a comma, you see that, before I put the next argument or the next parameter. So comma, then the significance. If I want to take 2, then what will be the answer? What is the answer? Yes? It's 6. COMBIN. So this retains the number of combinations for a given number of items. How many? So it's telling me I will be having this number of possible groups created. Do you understand? Okay. So what it means is that I can have you paired with this person paired with another person, you paired with another person. So the number of times I can create a pairing can be 4,950 times. Do you understand? Yes, now the next one is degree function. The next one is the even function. The next one is fact. Okay, and the next one is floor. You should try all this, they are quite a lot. And then int, mod, mode, and then odd, and then pi. Okay, pi is pretty easy. Pi. Okay, if you equal to pi, you see that it returns the value of the pi. Okay, so it actually needs no argument. Okay, right? Okay, so just like that. So you just try all of them. Pi, then you get power, and then product, and then quotient, and then radians. So imagine if we had to do this all in a class, we can't finish. But you have to go and learn on your own. And then round. Okay. So round will round a particular decimal number to the nearest whole number. Okay. And then sign. And then square roots. And then sum. We've done sum already. And then truncate. Trunk, and then average. You want to find an average of some set of numbers. Median. And then count, and count if, and then maximum, minimum, and then maxa, which is the opposite of it, of maximum, and then maxa, and then median, and then mina, and then mode, and then standard deviation, and then variation, and then concatenate. So concatenate is to actually add two strings together, right? If I say string, I mean letters, to add two strings together. So concatenate, and then exact, and then len, and then len, and then lower, and then proper, and then trim. Okay, last two, upper, and then the last one is the if function. Okay, now with the if function, you can use the if function to do a lot of stuff. Okay, we have another class which is supposed to happen next week. Because of your midterm, I'm not going to give you the class project now, but after the midterm, you have to submit a class project. If you go through the functions, at the end of the function slide, you would see a question there. There are about 2 or 3 questions. In our next class, I will divide you into groups and I'll give you this assignment. You should not miss next class.